Yes, you want to make something circular and sustainable, but you also want to make something that people want to wear, because in the end, that's how you're going to get people to buy those clothes that they really love and use for a long time. And that kind of brings us to that use phase and extending the life of the product. Speaking of sustainability, a podcast where we talk to frontrunners, innovators, and business specialists on, well, sustainability and where they think their industries are headed, and more importantly, how they can make them more sustainable. Hi there, this is Hani Lama from Ecochain, and in today's conversation, I'm speaking to Bert van Son, the founder and CEO of Mud Jeans, the world's first circular jeans brand. We talk about the principles that Mud Jeans is founded on, how they prove their product sustainability, and tips for brands looking to become a truly sustainable fashion brand. See you in the conversation. So, hi Bert, thank you so much for joining me in this podcast conversation today.
Good to see you again, old colleagues.
Yeah, of course. So, for all the listeners, I already do know Bert earlier. I used to work at Mud Jeans, so we have a little bit of a connection in that sense. But also, of course, Mud Jeans is a client of Ecochain, so we have a lot of nice things to talk about that we've also done as a collaboration in that sense. So yeah, really nice to speak to you today. And for those listeners who don't yet know too much about Mud Jeans and about what you're doing there, if you could just give a short introduction of yourself and what you're doing at Mud Jeans.
I do nothing. I just started the company, and I hope that all the other guys in the company are working very hard. Now, I started the company 10 years ago, and I try to invent new things and give direction to where we want to go in the coming 5 years. And our dots on the horizons, like for instance, now we want to make a totally recycled pair of jeans from post-consumer waste, things like that.
You're the captain of the ship in that sense.
I try to be.
Yeah, we will get to, of course, what you mentioned already, the road to 100, so the 100% recycled jeans and all of those topics. But just to get started on a more kind of general sense, what would you say is needed from fashion brands to actually be a truly sustainable fashion brand? What does that mean?
One of the things you have to start with is write down the mission and the purpose of your company. I think a company without a purpose today has no reason to exist. So, and if your purpose is only to try to make as much as possible profit for your shareholders, I don't believe that's a purpose of today's world. So firstly, your mission and your purpose. Try to imagine what you want to do besides making sure that you can pay all daily things that have to be paid. I think you have then to start measuring if you want to be a sustainable company, or if you want to improve your behavior, if you want to be better, then you have to know at least what you're doing. And for those measurements, you need information. And you have to give information. So that's important. Try to measure. Actually, it's a difficult thing we want to do. We actually want to try to sell less, although we want our piece of the cake to be bigger, of course, in the jeans industry, but we want to have less dirty jeans on the market. So we want to grow, and we hope that with our impact, we leave a better system behind and that we can improve. That we also can be hopefully an example company for other companies in the fashion industry. And we can talk for hours about it. It's a big issue. You're asking a huge question there, Helen.
Of course, it's a really big topic, but I think a lot of the things you mentioned are really interesting. And I think, as of course I know Mud Jeans also knows a lot about, is that there are a lot of consumers these days who are asking the right questions. 10 years ago, saying that your sustainable brand was maybe to some extent enough, but now it's really about what is sustainability indeed to your company? What are the goals that you're setting? How are you measuring them? Do you have the right type of information that you're looking at? And are you also willing to share maybe some of the things that, you're not there yet with?
Don't go so well. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so it's really interesting. And I think more and more companies such as Mud Jeans are responding to also having that information about your products available and being able to really look at the right things and also know where you should be improving. So whether that's the materials or the dyes or the processes or all kinds of stuff. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack there as well.
Absolutely.
But yes, there's a lot of different things we could speak about in terms of being a sustainable fashion brand. One of the things that you mentioned, and of course something that at Ecochain we're very focused on, is the data aspect. So being a data-driven fashion brand as well. And what does environmental data mean for you at Mud Jeans? Why is this important for you to gather that data?
I think that the fashion industry is one of the worst industries, and it's gone way beyond reasonable consumerism. I think we started making clothing to protect ourselves and to look good, and this is a very short story making of it. It's exploded into this fast fashion monster that where consumers are told to wear every week something new or something different, which in my eyes is totally useless. But okay, we're all human. We want to look good. We want to express ourselves. So we're trying to find this thin line in between saying, okay, we make beautiful products. We want to make them of high quality, lasting long, and still you have to feel good. So we try to make this elementary collection, which always has to be in your closet. And then we hope that you will buy some nice things on the side of it. But this your basics have to be of good quality, last long, and can stand the time of fashion. Let's say that, the jeans you buy from me are still looking good after 1 year, I hope. And the second important thing is the use of raw materials in the fashion industry are totally absurd also. And we want to make it circular. So we ask you as a consumer to think about the product you wear, and also we hope that you will send it back to us. That goes with the leasing system, but also with the deposit system. So if you send back your old jeans, you get a 10 euro discount. We try to bring people to the idea of making fashion circular, sending old clothing back to the producers, and that they honestly start reusing it. So there's legislation coming now for this. PR, the extended producer responsibility, which I think is a good thing. And
Definitely.
hopefully all my competitors are going to be following this, because this is our advantage now. We are 10 years ahead. We're doing
Yeah.
this already. And I hope because of this, it will help us grow, and it will also help us beat the competition.
I think one of the main problems, indeed, in fashion, which you already mentioned, was this kind of idea that we have to have this new collection every week
Every
or
week,
month or all the time, something new. And that's of course a big issue. And
yeah,
how do you address that? And also the other kind of point of, yes, you want to make something circular and sustainable, but you also want to make something that people want to wear, because in the end, that's how you're going to get people to buy those clothes that they really love and use for a long time. And that kind of brings us to that use phase and extending the life of the product and making something that is lasting a long time, that also people want to wear for a long time, something they're enjoying. And then the circularity aspect of what do you do after, so the end of life of the product. So what do you do after someone's done using it? So of course I know that that Mud Jeans is particularly focused on that, of course, with the recycled jeans and collecting back the jeans that people don't wear anymore, which is a really important part of I think any kind of circular brand, but especially in fashion.
and it's hard because you make a lot of extra cost to do this. We gather all jeans, we put them all together, we have to ship them to Spain where our recycler is. So all these costs, I have to find somewhere the coverage for this, and we cannot sell our jeans much more expensive. We also want to treat all the people in the whole chain in a good way and give them a fair share of the profit of, or at least give them a fair payment. That makes it really hard. And if you then keep on going, also saying we don't want to use toxic materials, we want to use less water in the production chain, we want to recycle the water, all in all together, it's very hard to be competitive.
And how do you deal with this issue? What would you recommend to companies who might also have that same question? Like, we want to work on sustainability, but it's going to cost us. What would you say to those brands?
You have to save money on other topics. So unluckily for us, we cannot be that strong in marketing, but we still have to get to you and find you as a consumer. So that's a difficult one. We have a small office. We try not to travel so much. We are careful with collectioning. We don't make too many samples. Everywhere you have to be more agile and save money on all small things to be able to still exist and make enough profits, pay your daily cost.
It's about choices.
Yeah.
I have one really nice example. It's not really from a fashion brand. It's actually from another client of us called Candy. They have
Mhm.
headphones, which they
Yeah.
decided like, okay, we know that there are certain aspects like the battery and other components, which really have a huge impact on the environment. They saw that from their LCA calculations as well. And they decided, okay, we really need to change the way that we build this product and make it more efficient and compact and smaller. And in the end, they ended up making also smaller packaging. So the packaging ended up costing less. And there are ways that you have to kind of make those decisions, but it might also end up in a situation where that having to really think about it and having to put focus on making these solutions work can also in the end up being cost benefit as well to some extent.
Yeah, it's true. It's the same with our jeans that are coming from Tunisia, from the factory. First of all, the transport is, of course, much less. We were not hurt when some Suez Canal is blocked or when the container prices go up. For us, it's very easy. It goes on the boat in Tunis, and 24 hours later, it's in Marseille. And we pack the boxes without plastic bags around each jeans. We just fold them and put them in the boxes. So we don't have to pay the plastic bags, but we did it out of a matter of saying we don't need plastic bags around our jeans. So yeah, true. Things like that are helping out. When you order online to us, we deliver normally the jeans by fiets courier, on the
Right.
bike. And the other thing was that the cotton price last year went up dramatically, and we use 40% waste. So we're only partly touched by that. Those things, yeah, you can have a little bit of luck doing the right thing. Also, that's nice.
Yeah, and hopefully in the future there will be more of these incentives. As you
Yeah,
mentioned, there are going to be these directives coming from places like the EU. And also hopefully there are some breaks also for the companies that are doing things well.
yeah. There's this legislation that I talked about, the EPR, and now there's also a law coming against greenwashing, which helps us a lot because every jeans brand gives itself the green dot today. And if you go on Zalando and you try to look for jeans, every jeans brand is sustainable now, which is amazing, I think, and
Hmm.
totally unbelievable. So legislation will help us. Absolutely. Yes.
One of the important things that what you mentioned is that yeah, there's a lot of companies that are really just greenwashing and are trying to put this sustainable stamp on their products, but aren't actually doing the work. And I know that, for example, Mud Jeans is one of the first jeans brands in the world who was also looking at biodiversity as a measure. So not only looking at, for
Yeah.
example, carbon and these types of things. Could you talk a little bit about why you find it important that biodiversity, for example, is also something that Mud Jeans looks at in terms of, yeah, having a full scope on sustainability?
Well, it's funny when you start a company like this, you just start by doing it. And during your whole journey through becoming a really sustainable brand, and we are now working on this for 10 years, you learn all the time. And one of the things we learned is that, yeah, like you say, there's not only CO2 emission and not only water usage and name you name it, but also the topic of biodiversity is becoming more and more a hot topic. People are talking about it. And we realized that actually nobody is measuring it, not only in the fashion industry, but in many industries.
Right.
So we wanted to learn and to try to find out what's happening in the world of also biodiversity. How do you measure that? What's good and what's bad? It's actually strange to say when you make a product, we do account for loss of biodiversity, and then imagine what's the industry standard. There's also something very difficult to capture. But we said, okay, let's try to imagine and let's try to find out, let's try to calculate, and let's try to be honest about it. Those kind of things come up. And it's also because we work with a young team of very intelligent, intrinsically motivated people that want to know these kind of things. So yeah, why not try to find out and be the first? And although it's not a happy message, but be honest about it.
Definitely. And I think it is indeed about, as you mentioned, there's so many things that you can look at as a company. And CO2, of course, is one of the things that
Yeah.
I think most often comes up in conversation, looking at carbon. But also biodiversity loss is something that I think more and more, there was the David Attenborough documentary, of course, which was highly focused on
Yeah.
biodiversity loss. But yeah, as you said, it's not the nicest topic, but it's something that we should be aware about in the products that we are using, and also having the accurate numbers as much as possible on those types of measures as well. So,
Yeah.
of course, we know that you've performed the life cycle assessment with Ecochain, and that this was one of the measures that you took into account. But of course, there's also other measures that you looked at. Could you talk a little bit about how do you communicate about these results that you get from your life cycle assessment? How do you
Yeah.
talk about that in your communication?
So we try to be radical transparent. Talk about, like you say, we talk about everything and also the things we still do bad or where we can improve. And that also has to do with our B Corp assessment. We have to be transparent for them. And also we have to put ourselves goals for the coming years. That's why we have such an incredible high score on B Corp. Um, we talk about it on our website. Every product you see under the product, well, you know this. There's a measurement from you that gives you all the indication, all the things you want to know about these measurements. And we deliver every year a sustainability report that gives you an overview of everything we do, also the traveling from us, and you name it. So that's the way we express ourselves and tell people what we do.
One of the key things that you mentioned there is also the product specific sustainability information. There's a lot of companies who talk about kind of a general
Yeah,
idea about the impact of a
yeah,
material or these types of things. But I remember when I was working at Mud Jeans, particularly, I was really surprised back then about how the washes and the dyes and the different type of products can actually have quite a different impact.
yes, yes,
And I remember that you have quite a big focus on also trying to seek out which are those different styles and which ones have the lowest impact, and kind of also promote those to the customers to let them know, like, these are the things that we can do to make the lowest impact jeans possible in different
yeah,
categories.
yeah. That's you see, for instance, the dark blue jeans we make with minimal washings are the most sustainable ones. We still are trying to convince our consumers to buy our jeans. So sometimes we have to do a little bit more of washing or with ozone or with laser
Yeah.
to be sure that we are also in vogue with the jeans that are running around in the streets.
And can you talk a little bit about how maybe the design process has changed when you found out, for example, you mentioned the dark blue washes and those types of
Yeah,
things. How
yeah.
has the design process changed after you know this information?
Well, actually, first of all, to go back a little bit, when you talk about circularity, I forgot to say that maybe it all starts in design. So if you want to be a circular company, and it goes for everything, I would say every industry, you realize that you are making something that you would like to have back after use and that you would like to recycle everything that's in it. So the first rule of circularity is try to make it easy for yourself and try to create a mono stream of raw material. And that's what we've
Yeah.
started to do. So the best thing is to have 100% cotton jeans without leather labels and without other materials. So we are still struggling to find a biodegradable stitching yarn because the strongest today is still polyester. We are also struggling with the percentage of elastan that you put in. Of course, for comfort's sake and for looks, maybe you want to have 20% polyester or elastan in them. We don't want to do that. So we go up to 2 or 3%, which we think should be the max. And
Yeah.
our recycler tells us that it's still doable to recycle that. So those are all challenges that companies that just design jeans don't have.
Yeah.
And then, yes, also with the outcome of your measurements, we know that if you start really bleaching the jeans and you use toxic material, that's not a good idea. So we use ozone for the bleaching process, which then helps.
Mhm.
But of course, you can argue that it needs more energy there or things like that. So it's all complicated. But yeah, as long as you measure, you can take decisions.
Yeah, it's about also making those informed decisions based off of the information that you can gather about your products
But
as well.
sometimes you have to have compromises and still use a little bit of elastan, or still,
Yeah.
we don't want to damage the jeans, for instance. When you damage jeans and you sell damaged jeans, I don't think that's very sustainable. But sometimes that's the fashion. But we don't do that. We just say
Mhm.
that's for us the line that we don't want to go on.
In any kind of sustainable decision making, it is about making choices and also about yeah, seeing back to those goals that you set as a company. What are the most important things that we want to focus on, or whether it's the materials or the circularity aspects and all of these things. What do you want to take into account? And that's kind of your guiding light in those decision makings. Then, even when they're sometimes a bit tough. Kind of back to the you've mentioned it a few times already in this conversation, and I know that it's a big motto at Mud Jeans, that you want other companies in the fashion industry to follow in the footsteps of Mud Jeans. And of course, Mud Jeans is a front runner in sustainable denim and within the fashion industry. So, what advice would you give to brands who are wanting to also follow in this really sustainable path, but are maybe more at the beginning of their journey? What advice would you give to them?
Interesting. I had a talk with our minister, Liesje Schrijnemacher, and she was doing a review of middle-sized companies in Holland. And one of the questions she asked was, do you have a CSR manager? And 99% of the companies replied, no, we don't have a CSR manager because it's too expensive. I would say, come on. I mean, even part-time, you could have a CSR manager and start measuring what you do and be interested in. They are very far behind. If you don't measure, then you can't say anything about your products, and you can't say that you're sustainable, and you can't say that you are doing something better. So hire a CSR manager, start with that, or even part-time, and give him or he a free hand. Let them research your company and be open for change. And change is always something very difficult. Nobody likes change, but you have to be open for change. And that's where it all starts. And then the journey gets good, gets interesting, and you'll see that many people in your company are very much in favor of trying to do things differently. And if you see the positive reaction of that and the fun, then the ball starts rolling and you can start making really changes in your company.
Well, that's
Advice.
very good advice for sure. And I think that's also something that I have heard from other sustainable leaders before. And that having someone in your company who can rally these initiatives and can make
Exactly.
sure that everybody knows what's happening and can also ask questions and be curious about, because as you said, it's not about that you know everything up front. You're gonna be
Yeah.
curious and find out more about what's happening, and hopefully that makes the people in the company excited and want to know even more and improve.
And be proud of working in your company also.
Exactly. That's also something I think, especially the younger generation is interested in this, and those are the people who are entering the workforce. I mean, it is a topic that everybody should definitely be interested in. I mean, it affects us all. Climate change.
We've created this mess, so we should also feel responsible and start finding solutions for the mess my generation has created for you guys. So
Yeah, we're all in
that's-
it together. On that note, of course, Mud Jeans is a front runner in this fashion space. But are there some other people, organizations, or companies that inspire you in terms of what they are doing to make our
oh
society
yeah,
more sustainable?
yeah. I'm a huge fan of Patagonia. I'm a huge fan of Fairphone in a total different industry where they do something magnificent. Of course, everybody loves Tony because they're slave-free chocolate.
Yeah, Tony Chocoloni, of course.
My heart goes to Dopper that now launched the new water tap. They just keep on going with their mission. They know their mission and they just go straight forward to it. So there's a lot of examples that are going well.
Nice, and a lot of those were also Dutch, so you can be proud.
Well, it's maybe because I'm in my little inner circle, my little bubble. But no, there's international fantastic things happening, but
Of
I
course.
may not know them that well.
Yeah, of course, also Patagonia with the news
Yeah,
recently and everything. It's definitely a company that we can all look up to,
yeah.
and the other ones as well. Great
So
examples.
stewardship, owner stewardship is an interesting topic as well. We have to look into that as
Yeah, and I also love that you mentioned Tony Chocoloni, which is of course also from a more of a social sustainability perspective.
well.
Another note which is very important. Thank you so much for joining the podcast. It was really interesting, and of course I knew already a little bit about machines, but I'm sure a lot of other companies can listen to the conversation and learn a lot about how you to make it successful and sustainable.
Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for watching this chat. If you enjoyed this episode, please click here to subscribe or here for more recent episodes. Bye bye.